We've all heard the stories. The charming guy who knows exactly what to say, how to make you laugh, how to make you feel like the only person in the room. He's smooth, charismatic, and never seems to stick around too long. Everyone calls him a playboy, but underneath, there's a mask, and it takes someone incredibly rare to see through it. This is about her, the super empath, the woman who didn't just fall for the charm, she saw the broken little boy behind it. But instead of being consumed by his games, she held her ground, and that changed everything. The playboy had met hundreds of women before, but none quite like her. She didn't chase, she didn't cling, she observed, she felt, she reflected, and where others melted under the heat of his attention, she stood firm in her own warmth. That strength, that was something he couldn't manipulate. She didn't try to expose him. She simply refused to give him the emotional fuel he was used to feeding on. And that, more than anything, revealed the truth. When a super empath walks into a room, they don't play the game, they change the game. She wasn't trying to fix him. She wasn't trying to win him. She was simply there, whole and grounded, unwilling to lose herself for someone who didn't even know who he really was. And that's what shattered him, not with cruelty, not with revenge, but with truth, with stillness, with a calm mirror that showed him the emptiness of the mask he wore. And when she walked away, he didn't just lose a woman. He lost his illusion of control. He lost his illusion of being untouchable. Because once someone truly sees you and still chooses themselves, you can't unsee your own cracks. The super empath does not approach relationships with blind emotion or naive idealism. She approaches them with heightened awareness, a deep sense of emotional intelligence, and an almost intuitive ability to read between the lines. While many people get swept up in charm, validation, and the attention someone gives them, she notices something else. The inconsistencies, the energy shifts, the carefully crafted persona. She sees not only what someone is saying, but what they're not saying. While others may interpret smooth talk and confidence as authenticity, she understands that often it's a mask designed to protect vulnerability or conceal insecurity. She doesn't assume every kind word is sincere or every romantic gesture is rooted in depth. She knows charm can be a tool, sometimes a weapon, and she refuses to be disarmed by it. The playboy, in particular, is used to people reacting to him with admiration or obsession. He feeds off the attention, the validation, and the emotional investment of those around him. His confidence isn't built on connection, it's built on control. He thrives when someone becomes addicted to his highs, dependent on his approval, or confused by his inconsistency. But when he encounters the super empath, that cycle doesn't begin. She doesn't need his attention to feel seen. She doesn't chase his affection to feel worthy. She's grounded in her own sense of self, which makes her incredibly difficult to manipulate. Her emotional strength isn't loud. It's not performative. It's still and quiet and unwavering. She can sit in silence and notice how he feels it. She can endure mixed signals without needing to act on them. She can stay in the presence of someone emotionally chaotic and still hold on to her internal peace. That stillness is powerful. It creates discomfort in those who rely on confusion to maintain power. He tries to impress her, but she doesn't react the way others do. She doesn't give him the inflated feedback he's used to. She listens more than she speaks. She lets him reveal himself slowly and unintentionally. She's not interrogating him. She's observing him. And that's what makes her different. Most people are so desperate to be chosen that they ignore red flags and rationalize bad behavior. They cling to potential instead of reality. The super empath doesn't do that. She doesn't ignore her intuition for the sake of a fantasy. If something feels off, she doesn't dismiss it. She gives people space to be authentic, but she also holds them accountable with quiet detachment. Her sense of boundaries is internal. She doesn't always need to explain or justify them. She simply knows when someone's energy is not aligned with honesty, and she adjusts her emotional investment accordingly. What confuses the playboy is that she doesn't resist him. She simply doesn't fall into the trap. He's used to being pursued, to being the center of someone's world. But the super empath sees him clearly. She recognizes the pattern, not just in his words, but in his behavior. And when she spots the cracks, she doesn't run toward them to heal them. She steps back, not out of cruelty, but because she knows it's not her job to fix someone who doesn't want to be real. Her observation is not judgmental, it's discerning. She has compassion, yes, but she also has self-respect. She doesn't allow that compassion to turn into self-sacrifice. She understands that emotional intelligence doesn't mean emotional martyrdom. She can care deeply but still walk away. She can feel someone's pain without letting it become her burden. Her strength lies in knowing that just because she can understand someone doesn't mean she has to endure them. That awareness, that depth of presence, renders the playboy powerless. Because once someone sees through the mask and refuses to play the game ends. And he realizes, often too late, that he didn't meet just any woman. He met the one who truly saw him and still chose herself. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, so quiet that it unnerves the very people who are used to dominating others with noise, chaos, and emotional intensity. The super empath understands this. She knows that true power isn't about how loudly you argue, how passionately you demand answers, or how often you chase for clarity. It's about the energy you don't give away. It's about the stillness you maintain when someone else is trying to shake you, when she is confronted with mixed signals, manipulative behavior, or emotional games. Her default is not reaction. It is observation and control. Not of others, but of herself. And that self-control is magnetic and threatening at the same time. The playboy operates in a world of highs and lows. He is used to creating emotional roller coasters that keep people hooked. A compliment is followed by a cold shoulder. A romantic evening is followed by sudden silence. This inconsistency creates emotional dependency in most people. They want to go back to the good moment, so they chase. They want the connection to make sense, so they seek answers. But the super empath doesn't fall into this pattern. She feels the confusion, but she doesn't collapse into it. She may want clarity, but she doesn't beg for it. Instead, she becomes quieter, more still, more intentional. This calmness is not detachment out of indifference. It's grounded emotional maturity. The super empath has often gone through her own emotional storms, and she has learned that chasing someone who thrives on inconsistency only deepens the dysfunction. Her calm detachment is her shield. It doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she won't allow her care to be used as a tool against her. And that confuses the playboy. He throws his usual bait, expecting an emotional reaction, but she offers none. She doesn't get jealous to win his attention. She doesn't fight for a place in his life. She lets things unfold, and in doing so, forces him to confront his own emptiness. The playboy often relies on confusion to keep others unbalanced, but confusion has no power over someone who doesn't need the other person to define their worth. That's what makes the super empath different. She has trained herself to sit with discomfort. She doesn't seek immediate resolution if that resolution comes at the cost of her self-respect. She doesn't trade her peace just to get temporary closeness. Her stillness is a form of communication. It says, I see what you're doing and I'm not playing along. It's not about ego or manipulation. It's about integrity. This emotional self-possession is incredibly rare. Most people are reactive. They get pulled into the energy of the other person. They match chaos with chaos, silence with desperation, distance with overreaching. But she breaks the pattern. She knows that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not because you're weak, but because your power doesn't come from control. It comes from choice. And she chooses peace, even when someone else chooses confusion. The playboy, used to seeing his tactics work, begins to falter. He notices he's not getting the same reactions he's used to. He tries harder, pushing emotional buttons, testing boundaries, inserting just enough affection to tempt her. But her calm remains. She doesn't swing between affection and anger. She stays steady in herself. And that's what breaks the dynamic. The super empath is not easily rattled because she has done the inner work. She knows who she is, what she deserves, and what she's unwilling to entertain. Her calm detachment is not a game, it's her standard. She's not trying to punish anyone, she's just protecting her peace. And in a world where emotional manipulation is often disguised as affection, that kind of emotional clarity is revolutionary. It forces even the most emotionally unavailable people to reconsider the way they connect, or risk losing someone who sees through everything and still refuses to lose herself. The super empath does not enter relationships to rescue or reform anyone. She understands that love is not about molding someone into who you need them to be, but about meeting someone where they are and deciding if they align with your standards. She isn't driven by a savior complex. While she may recognize someone's wounds, she doesn't make them her responsibility to heal. That's the critical difference. The playboy may be charming and emotionally evasive, and while others might view him as a project or someone with potential, she sees the reality. She doesn't look at who he could become if he changed, she evaluates who he is right now. That perspective keeps her grounded and keeps her from pouring energy into someone not ready to receive it. She has learned, often the hard way, that trying to change someone only leads to exhaustion and resentment. The emotional labor of trying to fix another person is not only draining, it's a distraction from her own growth. She knows her energy is sacred and it cannot be spent chasing promises or illusions. When she sees inconsistency or manipulation, she doesn't make excuses. She doesn't rationalize disrespect in the name of understanding someone's past. Compassion to her does not mean self-abandonment. She can care about someone's pain without allowing it to rewrite her boundaries. That is her strength. She holds her standards not because she's rigid or unkind, but because she knows what self-respect feels like. She's learned to trust herself. When someone violates her values, she listens to the discomfort. She doesn't need a person to become someone else to feel loved. She needs the connection to be rooted in truth, effort, and mutual care. If those things are absent, she doesn't bargain for them. She walks. Not out of anger, but out of alignment. She knows her worth, and she knows that staying in a place where she has to constantly explain, teach, or prove herself only diminishes it. The playboy isn't used to this. He's used to women who try to win him over, prove their loyalty, or work harder to earn his affection. He's used to being at the center of someone's focus, even when he puts in the bare minimum. But when he meets the super empath, that dynamic doesn't play out. She doesn't give him endless chances. She doesn't try to teach him how to treat her. She already knows how she should be treated, and she simply won't tolerate less. Her silence says more than any argument could. Her distance communicates what her presence once gave him access to. That shift is powerful. The beauty of her strength is that it's not reactive, it's consistent. Whether she's in love or letting go, she maintains her dignity. She doesn't punish or guilt trip. She doesn't manipulate to feel in control. She simply refuses to participate in cycles that require her to lower her standards. That refusal is what makes her stand out. She never tries to shame someone into becoming better. She simply shows what better looks like by how she carries herself, how she sets boundaries, and how she refuses to stay where she is not valued. There's a quiet authority in the way she moves. The playboy senses it. He sees that she's not like the others. Not because she's colder, but because she's clearer. She doesn't argue to be chosen. She doesn't perform to be loved. Her value isn't up for debate, and that's something many never expect. In a world where many compromise themselves to feel accepted, the super empath remains rooted in her truth, and when she walks away, it's not with bitterness, it's with peace, knowing she stayed true to herself in a situation that tried to pull her away from that center. The super empath doesn't need to confront someone with accusations or emotional outbursts to reveal the truth. She doesn't expose others by force. She does it simply by existing in her authentic energy. Her presence alone becomes a mirror. She reflects what is real, what is beneath the surface. The playboy, who's built his identity on charm, control, and seduction, is not used to being seen in this way. He's used to people admiring the image he projects, not questioning its authenticity. But when someone like her enters his world, he begins to feel something unfamiliar exposed. She doesn't interrogate his intentions or pick apart his words. She simply pays attention to his patterns. She watches how his words line up with his actions. She notices how his attention fluctuates, how his efforts are inconsistent, how his presence is conditional. And while others may overlook these signs in favor of the fantasy he offers, she doesn't. She may not say it outright, but he can feel that she sees through him. It's in her eyes, in her silence, in the way she doesn't fall for the same tactics that worked on everyone else. That realization for him is destabilizing. What unnerves him is that she doesn't react the way he expects. When he withdraws, she doesn't chase. When he plays games, she doesn't play back. When he offers crumbs, she doesn't stretch her hands in hunger. She simply exists with dignity, and that calmness shines a light on his chaos. It highlights everything he's trying to hide: his emotional unavailability, his fear of intimacy, his tendency to control situations rather than connect genuinely. He is not used to being emotionally naked, but with her, he feels seen in ways that make his mask uncomfortable to wear. This mirror effect is not something she tries to create. It happens naturally when someone refuses to be fooled. She doesn't confront him with anger or try to prove him wrong. She doesn't even argue. She lets the contrast speak for itself. Her stability makes his instability visible. Her sincerity makes his performance obvious. Her boundaries expose his lack of respect. And he feels it even if he doesn't admit it. For someone who has built his identity on maintaining control, this reflection feels like a threat, not because she's attacking him, but because she's making him see himself. She is not seeking to tear him down or call him out. She's simply committed to her truth. And the more she stays in her truth, the more his lies become obvious. She doesn't use emotional manipulation or guilt. She uses clarity, consistency, and presence. That's why the Playboy can't control the situation the way he normally would. He can't twist her reactions because she's not reacting, she's observing. He can't pull her into chaos because she's rooted in calm. He can't get under her skin because she's not relying on him for validation. Her independence leaves him with nothing to feed on. He may try to regain power through flirtation, silence, or sudden affection. But the mirror remains. Every time he steps into her presence, he sees not only the woman he can't control, but also the man he's been avoiding. The one who wears charm like armor and connection like a mask. And that's the most uncomfortable truth, because now he knows that someone has truly seen him, and yet she's not impressed, not intimidated, and not waiting for him to become someone else. What she reveals isn't his darkness, it's his avoidance of light. She doesn't humiliate him, she humbles him quietly just by being who she is. And once someone has seen you like that, once someone has looked past your games and straight into your emptiness, it's impossible to unsee it. The mask cracks, and suddenly pretending no longer feels like power, it feels like prison. When the super empath walks away, it is not a theatrical gesture or a manipulation tactic. It's not done to trigger guilt or to provoke a reaction. It is an act of alignment, an inner decision born from clarity and self-respect. She walks away not because she stopped caring, but because she finally realized the care was not being returned in a way that matched her depth. Her leaving is quiet, but its impact is seismic. The Playboy doesn't see it coming, not because she didn't warn him, but because he assumed she would always be there. He mistook her patience for permanence and her compassion for permission. He never thought she would actually go. She doesn't announce her departure with bitterness. There's no need for a dramatic exit. The truth is, she often leaves emotionally before she physically removes herself. She begins by reclaiming her energy, detaching piece by piece as she recognizes how much of herself she has been pouring into someone who never intended to truly receive her. The emotional breadcrumbing, the inconsistencies, the flashes of charm followed by cold indifference, all of it begins to lose its effect on her. What once confused her now becomes clear. What once hurt her now feels empty. And in that space of quiet revelation, she chooses herself. The power of her walking away lies in its finality. She doesn't leave with lingering resentment or unfinished conversations. She doesn't look back hoping he'll chase her or finally understand. She walks because she has already outgrown the experience. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, she no longer fits the version of herself that accepted less than she deserved. And that is something the Playboy cannot ignore. He might not feel the loss immediately, but he will feel the absence of her presence, the emotional safety, the non-judgmental understanding, the nurturing spirit she brought. All of it disappears the moment she decides enough is enough. The Playboy often relies on the idea that no one truly leaves. He thrives on the cycle, pushing people away only to reel them back in when it suits him. But she breaks the cycle. She doesn't return for one last conversation or closure. Her closure comes from knowing she was authentic the whole way through. She showed up with love, with honesty, with openness. If someone couldn't meet her there, she accepts it, not with sadness, but with grace. That's what stings the most for him. He didn't get to decide when it ended. He didn't get to control the narrative. Her departure reveals a truth he had been avoiding. He didn't lose someone who needed him. He lost someone who loved him deeply, but didn't need him to feel whole. And that kind of loss stays with a person. Because it's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not reversible. It lingers in the quiet moments, when the attention fades, when the thrill of the game dies down, when he reaches for connection and finds no one left who sees him like she did. The super empath was never asking for perfection, only presence, only consistency, only respect. When those things weren't given, she didn't rage, she released. And that's what makes her walk away so powerful. It's not revenge, it's revelation. It exposes the imbalance in the dynamic, the depth she brought versus the surface level effort he gave. Her leaving isn't a punishment, it's a reflection. A silent message that says, I won't stay where I'm not met. And once she's gone, he begins to understand the weight of what he lost. Not just her, but the version of himself he could have become had he chosen to meet her with the same depth. But by the time he realizes it, she's long gone, not angry, not waiting, but at peace, having chosen herself. In the end, the super empath didn't shatter the Playboy's mask with cruelty, confrontation, or revenge. She shattered it by being unshakably herself, by not chasing, not pleading, and not tolerating a love that came with conditions. Her power wasn't in her anger, it was in her stillness. Her decision to walk away wasn't a loss for her, it was her greatest reclaiming. She never tried to prove she was worthy of love. She knew she was. And that's what the Playboy never anticipated, that someone could see all of him, even the hidden parts, and still choose to leave, not out of hate, but out of self-honor. He wore the mask because it kept him in control. She took it off without lifting a finger. She simply refused to be another person fooled by it. Because real love doesn't look like control. It doesn't look like games. It doesn't confuse, belittle, or drain. And when someone finally stands firm enough in their worth to say, this isn't enough, they don't just free themselves, they force the other person to face who they really are. That is what the super empath did. And that is how the mask broke. Thank you for listening with an open heart and an open mind. If you saw yourself in the super empath, I hope this reminded you of your strength, your intuition, and the value of standing in your truth, even when it's hard. If you saw yourself in the Playboy, perhaps this is your moment to reflect, to drop the mask, and to finally allow yourself to be seen for real. No matter where you are on your journey, remember this: protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. Walk away when it's time. Stand tall in your silence, and never forget, choosing yourself isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of real love. Until next time, take care of your heart. And thank you truly for being here.